And welcome to Winning Retirement Television. My name is Cynthia DeFazio, and I'm joined today by Greg and Kristen Taylor of Legacy Retirement Group. Kristen, how are you today?
I'm doing great. How are you doing?
I'm fantastic. Always excited to see you, and I love how we coordinate a little bit with red.
Yeah, and then we have our oddball out that decided to wear green teal today.
Teal, that's right. Well, see, I think last week you said that I only wear blue.
Oh, this was intentional.
So I had to prove you wrong.
I was wondering what happened, what got into you with this get up, but I like it.
I love it. Well, speaking of last week, wow, what a response we had to Retirement 101. People were so interested in what you had to say because basically there's not a class that you can take in college that prepares you for the myriad of retirement issues, if you will. So it's very interesting to me because last week we covered different types of accounts, asset classes, as well as risks and concerns with the retirees. But what else do they need to learn about? Kristen?
Well, yeah, so last show was all about arming you with the basics, and I was just thinking while you were talking there, when I went to Ohio State, that's where I went to college, I was signing up for my classes, and when you're signing up for those one-on-one courses, you're thinking, oh, these are going to be easy, right?
Of course.
And I remember specifically there was a class, I don't remember the name of it exactly, but it was a computer basics class. It was computer and data entry 101 or something like that.
Okay.
And I signed up for it. Well, when I got to school and got settled and started making friends, we were all exchanging what our schedule was. And I remember telling a couple people that were sophomores, they weren't freshmen, that I had signed up for this class. And they're all like, why in the world would you have done that? And I'm thinking, well, I feel like I want to be armed with the basics. I want to know this stuff because anything I do in business is going to, this is going to be important to know the basics of computing and all that. And come to find out, this is like the do not take class at the time, 20 plus years ago.
Right.
This was the class you don't take because you almost never get an A in it and it's super hard. There's people that fail, you drop it or whatever. Well, long story short, I actually did really well in it because I'm a nerd and I like that kind of stuff. But as you're learning these basics, it's important. Don't feel overwhelmed. Don't think it's going to be hard because someone says it's going to be hard. Actually, a lot of it's easy once you start gathering the information and getting a plan in place. The hard part really is educating yourself so that you know enough. I used to say know enough to be dangerous. That doesn't sound too good. But know enough to really decipher who's going to help you the best way and help you make those decisions. Because again, like I've said the last two shows, you really want to get educated so you're empowered to make decisions for yourself as you face this thing called retirement. So the plan, I think we should talk about the plan. So a 401k is not a plan, an IRA is not a plan, a bank account's not a plan. Really nailing down how a plan actually should work in retirement. It's not those accounts, that's just stuff. I call it piles of money. We actually need to figure out what to do with all those things to make it a working plan for you in your retirement.
Kristen, a LIMRA survey noted that of the people that thought they had a plan, so not just everybody, but the people that thought they had a plan in place, only 38% of those actually had a written plan for retirement.
Okay.
And so it's taking all the things that we talked about from last week's show, the real risks, concerns that people have as they enter into this thing called retirement, and then the 5 core areas. So the investment plan, knowing that our risk is right, knowing that we have things set up properly for a retirement portfolio, not just a portfolio because they're different.
Okay.
A retirement income plan, a retirement tax plan, a retirement health care plan, and then whatever's left over in a legacy plan. That's our estate plan for whatever's left behind when we're gone. And so those are the 5 areas that we really call the 5 core retirement areas that we talked about last week. Well, how do we transition that into a plan itself?
Right.
So knowledge is power, and that's why I wrote a book. We call our show, Winning Retirement with Greg and Kristen Taylor.
Yeah.
And the title of our book, or my book, is Winning Retirement.
Yeah.
And, I want people to know how to win. I don't like to lose at anything. The boys and I will play, we have a pool table in our basement.
Okay.
And Christian, our oldest, loves playing pool with me. And so he'll say, hey, well, do you have time to play pool? I'll say, sure, buddy, go get it set up. And I'll go downstairs. I say, are you feeling lucky tonight?
The pool game gets very loud, by the way.
I can only imagine.
And I can tell you, if he beats me, he beat me legit because I don't let him win, right?
Okay.
And I don't want anybody to feel like they can't win at retirement. And so part of that is understanding what a plan is. And so what is a plan? Well, a plan starts with your goals. And that is, okay, how much income? Well, first of all, what do you want to do in retirement? You know, whatever it is you want to do. You want to travel? Do you want to spend time with your family? Do you want to, do updates on your house? What is it that retirement looks like for you? You might even want to start a new career or work part-time and something fun, something that would be fulfilling, maybe volunteer. But whatever that looks like, we want you to know what that is so then we can figure out how much it costs. Then, once we figure out the cost of retirement and about how much we need to plan on living on in retirement, then we look at, okay, have we met all the criteria? Have you saved enough,
Yeah.
to fulfill that plan? And that's where you kind of do the math. That's part of the goal setting process, is doing the math to see, okay, can I even, am I even set up to be able to retire someday or now? And then it's principle based. We have some principles in our practice we live by. No investment decision is made outside the context of a plan.
Okay.
So therefore, the plan determines what we put our money in or the positions we hold. We want you to be efficient with risk, knowing what your risk score is, and then making sure that where you're currently at makes sense for the risk score you're comfortable with. Making sure that those are actually in the same place or very similar places. We want to make sure you protect your income, then grow the rest. We don't want your portfolio to take a hit, so we don't want healthcare costs. We don't want inflation or taxes to derail your portfolio. And we talked about all those things last week on the show, taxes and healthcare and inflation and all those things as part of the retirement concerns, right?
Absolutely.
So once we have that in place, you need to understand the transition. And that's where we're transitioning from accumulating wealth, bringing it in, to now taking distributions. Now some of it goes out. And that works totally different. It really does. Money works different when you're just growing it versus when you are taking distributions for income. So it really does. And then the 3-bucket approach.
Okay.
So that's our liquid bucket. We need money for liquidity, needs, wants, emergencies. I like to refer to that as our sleep well at night money. That's money in the bank.
Yeah.
So then your income bucket, that's where we look for sources of dependable income. And we want to use sources that require the least amount of money to generate the income that people need to reach the goal. Get that. See, you have a goal, then you find out how to hit that goal. It's an amazing thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then whatever's left goes into the growth bucket. Okay, so liquid, income, growth. And when those three work together in tandem, I was a choir director for over 20 years. And you had the sopranos and the altos and the tenors and the basses. And, I didn't want any one of those to outshine the other. The more they worked in harmony with each other, the more beautiful it sounded.
Sure, that makes sense.
And so I love that. And, I loved putting that all together. Well, something I love more is putting together a plan for retirement. I love it.
Well, you can tell. It shows. And you're both so passionate when you get talking about how to help others retire confidently and with just ease, peace of mind, as you mentioned, and it definitely shows. That's why the viewers love you so much. Now, Greg and Chris, I know there's a very special offer that you'd like to present our viewers at home today. Let's talk about what that is before we open the phones.
Well, I'm going to offer our complete planning review. So we're going to talk about those 5 core areas that I talked about in this segment, where we want you to have a solid retirement investment strategy, a retirement income plan, a tax plan to give you confidence moving forward, a healthcare plan, and a legacy plan. And for the first 10 callers today, and I don't know if we've ever done this on the show, I want to really educate you. I want to send you a copy of my book, Winning Retirement. So for the first 10 callers, we'll set up a meeting, come in, we'll help you create your personal retirement strategy, And before you come in, I'll send you a copy of the book so you can educate yourself even further on how to have a winning retirement. That's 614-336-7660, 614-336-7660. Look, there's no cost for this. It's complimentary. If we can help you, we just want to be able to help you have that retirement you always dreamed of.
Greg, thank you so much. Kristen, thank you so much. To our viewers at home, the number to call is on your screen. That number is 614-336-7660. We're going to take a very short commercial break, but when we come back, we're going to have so much more about Retirement 101 Part 2 when we return.
Living a life is building a legacy of milestones. Your first home, raising your children, becoming grandparents, and memories. From the first steps across the living room floor to the walk down the aisle, at every stage, your family is the most important part of your life, and you want to protect them now and in the future. Which is why the decisions you make today are so important. You've worked hard to provide a better life for your loved ones. Now is the time to make sure that lasts. Build a legacy that will influence generations to come. Plan smart. Retire well with Legacy Retirement Group.
And welcome back to Winning Retirement TV. My name is Cynthia DeFazio. I'm joined by Greg and Kristen Taylor of Legacy Retirement Group. A wonderful show we're having today, Part 2 of Retirement 101, and I just love all the information that you're sharing with the viewers at home. We've talked about this in the past, obviously, that retirement income, Kristen, I've heard you actually say it's the foundation of a good retirement plan. My question is, when you have clients that come in with concerns about their income, how do you help address those?
Yeah, absolutely, because it does equal your lifestyle. It's the foundation of how you're going to live throughout your retirement years. And I think it's important to really understand that this is a necessity to focus on, because outside of Social Security, there's not much money there for most families. If you're watching today, you know, you may have a small pension left that's from a company you worked for a small amount of time, and that's maybe a couple $100s. And I'm just basing it on the calls we get in. We don't meet with many people that have a full retirement pension anymore.
Unless they work for the state.
Unless they work for the state. I mean, the years of 10 years ago, we saw all kinds of company pensions. But outside of the STRS or the OPRs, or, you know, if you're a police officer, things like that, you don't see pensions as much anymore. So knowing that, okay, I have Social Security, which may be a decent amount if you were a high income earner throughout your life for the one spouse, but typically you don't see too high Social Security dollar amounts come into our office.
Right.
It's one or the other, because usually the one poured their whole life, heart and soul into their work, and the other one may have stayed home. Sometimes it's the woman, sometimes it's the man. And so you see one high one, one lower one, maybe not much lower, but still lower. And so we have to start thinking, okay, not only do we need to account for income for both of our lives, but should one of us predecease the other a significant time apart, we've got to figure out how we're going to captivate those dollars that are lost, at least from the Social Security, if not maybe a small pension. So we really want to make sure that that's ironed out. The income plan is so, so important. And we'll get calls sometime in the office. I like to address the different types of calls we get where I don't really need any income. I have, you know, a high net worth and I'm drawing income off of dividends. Well, okay, well, that can be a part of your income plan. This is the money we're getting from dividends. And, you know, should something like during COVID happen where there was a couple company stocks that didn't do dividends, you know, and if that was a big part of your dividend income, how are we going to replace that? Or say your spouse doesn't like risk and could possibly want to, you know, liquidate those stocks. When you pass away, how are we going to offset income? So we want to start that conversation no matter what, whether you have income addressed or you don't. We want to have that plan in place.
Okay. Okay, very important. Greg, I want to talk to you a little bit, obviously, about the growth bucket. Can we talk about that in retirement?
Well, the growth bucket, in my mind, is kind of that ability to plan for the long term. Because retirement, in many cases, is a long term. It could be 20, 25, 30 or more years that people have to plan to have this money. So there needs to be an element that can outpace inflation. But the real key for having a properly balanced growth bucket is one that isn't just dependent upon stocks or isn't just dependent upon bonds, but is widely diversified in areas that maybe can still do well or do okay, or at least protect principal when the market is crashing, right? And so the growth bucket needs to be well-rounded. And what we're looking for there is a word I call efficient.
Okay.
Because I can tell you right now, there's not an advisor in town that has the perfect portfolio.
Okay.
Not one.
Yeah.
So we use a metric when we measure risk and when we test portfolios for families, which we do every single week, many families we get to test for. We're looking to see, okay, how much risk is there in your portfolio? How much return have you received? And overall, when you balance those two numbers together, then the ratio of those two balanced together is something called a Sharpe ratio. And it really measures the efficiency of a portfolio. And when we do that, we can identify where the weaknesses are. And we can show a family, look, I mean, just last week, I met with a family and their portfolio was only about 22% efficient. That means their Sharpe ratio was 0.22. We want the Sharpe ratio to be 1.0 or better, shows it's efficient. So they weren't getting much return for all the risks they were taking, and so therefore they weren't efficient. And that was an eye-opener.
Sure.
Because they thought they were doing way better than they actually were. And so when we see that, then it lets us know, okay, that can be improved upon. So it's not that somebody has the magic bullet, the silver bullet, whatever you want to call it. It's that we're looking for a risk that's lower, a return that's a little better, and overall more efficient. And when we can do that, that provides more confidence. And by the way, it provides more growth, because there's something kind of a misnomer in the world of growth.
Okay.
And that is the average return. So, but what's interesting is whenever there's a big drop in the market, the average return is not the actual return.
Okay.
So, for instance, if I started with $100,000 and I lost 50%,
Okay.
how much money would I have?
50,000.
You're right. So what if the next year I gained $50,000? Now how much would I have?
100,000.
You meant 50%.
50%. If I gained,
Wait a minute, that's different. Okay, let me take that
so
one
if I
back.
had 50,000, gained 50%,
Okay.
how much would I have?
75,000.
75,000. That's right. So if I lost 50% in the first year and I gained 50% in the second year, what would be my average rate of return?
That's a great question. I would break even, right?
Right. So that'd be a zero, right?
Okay.
But if I only have 75,000 left out of 100, does that feel like zero?
No.
That feels like a minus 25.
Feels like I lost something.
So
Absolutely.
whenever there's volatility in the market, the average rate of return is never the actual rate of return. And so that's something a lot of people don't understand. And that we call this the sequence of the returns, the order in which the returns happen. And it's so much different when we're putting money in on a regular basis versus when we're taking it out. So your retirement growth bucket, your retirement investment strategy has to be more efficient because of the devastation it can cause trying to pull money out of an up and down asset. So that's huge.
Yeah.
So with that, Cynthia, the most important part of your growth bucket is that you be efficient.
Okay, thank you so much. Greg, I know that you and Kristen have a very special offer to present to our viewers at home. Let's talk about what that is before we open the phone lines.
Well, we call this our complete planning review.
Okay.
That we want to look at your personal situation. We want to dig down deep. We want to understand the risk. We want to understand the return, how efficient you are. Not just efficient with your investment portfolio. Are you efficient with income? Are you efficient with taxes? Are you efficient with healthcare? Do you have an efficient estate plan strategy or legacy plan? Are you going to be efficient? Is there anything that could potentially be slipping through the cracks for you and your family? We'd love to test it and find out. Give us a call, 614-336-7660. 614-336-7660. Anyone that calls before the end of today's show, a team member will make time for you to sit down with you and create a plan for you and your family.
Greg, thank you so much. Kristen, thank you so much. To our viewers at home, the number to call is on your screen. That number is 614-336-7660. We're going to take a very short commercial break, but when we come back, I'm going to talk to Greg and Kristen about how do you make sure once you have that plan put in place that it's still working for you. Stay tuned for their response.
Welcome to Winning Retirement Radio with Greg and Kristen Taylor.
Kristen and I love doing Winning Retirement Radio.
You know, it's funny. Greg dragged me kicking and screaming to the radio show. He saw something in me that I didn't even see in myself. I was scared to death. I couldn't even do a sound check. And he just convinced me, you know, I really think it would be great for people to get the dynamic of us together.
I think it's cool that Greg and Kristen have a radio show. And I think it's cool that I work for a company with a public media presence.
It's a way to talk directly to people that I know are tuned in for specific information. And so for us, it's just, you know, letting ourselves be us.
And of course, you know, I'm a battered husband. I get picked on every week on the show.
It's like being a fly on the wall.
And a lot of our listeners just really enjoy my singing more than anything else on the show.
We kind of get kind of a sneak peek.
I might just break out in song at any time.
Greg pretty much singing every radio show.
Ave Maria.
He says something that I think is funny. I call him out on it. He does me too. And I think that realness that we're able to provide is something that's different.
I love the radio show.
It's really cool to kind of see it from when it's being recorded to what it is when it's live.
We have a lot of fun.
It's one of my favorite things that we do.
It's certainly been a joy.
When people come into our office, they feel like they already know us.
And welcome back to Winning Retirement TV. My name is Cynthia DeFazio, and I'm joined today by Greg and Kristen Taylor of Legacy Retirement Group. A wonderful show we're having today, obviously part 2 of Retirement 101. I know a lot of people in the viewing audience, they're wondering the same thing. They have a plan in place, everything looks great, but how do they make sure that it's still working for them? Is there any follow-up classes, any additional homework? Kristen, I'm going to give this to you.
Okay, yeah, it's important to make sure that it's still working for you because like I say, it's a living, breathing organism, right?
Sure.
And all the things we've talked about today on the show and on last show, on part 1 of our series, are like pieces of a puzzle, right?
Yeah.
So my oldest sister, Kathy, and she's going to be mad that I said oldest, but I did that on purpose, she loves doing puzzles. So does Greg's mom, my mother-in-law. She loves puzzles as well. But my oldest sister, she likes to glue them down on a mat board as she's placing the pieces. She does it at the same time. And she'll frame them and give them as gifts. So we have one hanging down in our boys' rumpus room, their playroom, their man cave, if you will. And it's beautiful. It's a Mickey, cinematic Mickey looking picture. Well, recently she was creating one and she got to the very end and realized she was missing a piece.
No.
And I mean, how heartbreaking is that when you're doing a puzzle?
Oh, I can't even imagine.
Because if you're just putting it together, you throw the whole thing, you know, you take it all
Right.
apart and put it in the box and forget about it. Well, she actually, because it was all glued down and she was going to be framing it, she had to call the company and get the extra piece sent.
Right, yes.
Because she needed that piece. Well, I think the retirement plan is kind of like that. And one piece we haven't talked about is how you're going to pass this money down after you pass away, or you know, or even just getting the legacy plan in place. And it's an important part of not only passing the money on, but actually while you're living, making sure that those documents are in place. Your legacy planning documents, those estate planning documents, are there as well. And so as you get those things in order, like you said, what do we do to make sure that it stays working for us? That's an important part of how we make sure it's still working for us. But also doing reviews. How many people, Greg, do we meet with that say that they hadn't really had a review with their advisor? So making sure you're constantly checking in on the plan, because it may need to change. It may not be today what it needed to be 10 years ago for you.
Sure, that makes sense.
So we've kind of talked about all the areas. We talked about, you know, our portfolios. We've talked about income plans. We've talked about taxes. We've talked a little bit about healthcare. And now we come down to our legacy plan.
Okay.
And with our legacy plan, Cynthia, you know, I look at it and say, well, first of all, do we have anything in place? You know, so a basic will, And a basic will is the most basic. Well, if you do nothing, then the government has a plan, or actually the probate court has a plan, and it's called intestate. And intestate means that you've made no provisions for what you would like to leave to someone else, so therefore the court gets to decide. And it's loads of fun, especially if you have family members, right? I mean,
Absolutely.
so that can really wedge a family apart. It really
Yes.
can.
Yes.
So I'm sure Mom wanted me to have that. No, she told me one time that I could have, you know what I'm saying?
Yes. 100%.
And so I used to love watching the old John Wayne movies. The Duke, right?
Absolutely.
Hang 'em high, right? And all those. And so I like to watch the old John Wayne movies. But when John Wayne passed away, his estate went to probate for over 7 years. 7 years. And it only ended when it ran out of money because of all the fighting and bickering that
Isn't
went
that
on.
amazing?
That is amazing.
It's heartbreaking, really.
Yeah.
So if you have a will, it doesn't keep it out of probate, but it does allow your wishes to be carried on. So at least have a basic will.
Okay.
And make sure it's up to date with your current wishes and things you want to happen. A durable power of attorney for financial assets. That's important. So if you become incapacitated, someone you trust can carry on and pay your bills, take care of your finances. Durable power of attorney for health care. Now, should you do a trust or not a trust? Well, if you do a trust, anything you put inside the trust, if it's properly titled, will avoid probate. So you can avoid the hassle of time and costs and loss of privacy that happens at probate simply by setting up a trust or making sure there's a beneficiary designation on everything you do. Now, Kristen, in college, did the professors ever let you do a lab?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And so a lab is just an opportunity to take what you've learned and put it into practice. So anyone that calls within the next 24 hours, by listening to this show, we're going to invite them to come in and take a lab and apply what they've learned on our show to their personal situation.
Greg, thank you so much. Kristen, thank you so much for such an amazing series, Retirement 101, Part 1 and 2. To the viewers at home, thank you for spending time with us. The number is 614-336-7660. Be safe, be happy, and be blessed. We'll see you back 1 week from today on Winning Retirement TV.